Alright, so this is training log number 24 now. And I suppose most of the people that watch the videos would know like my main goal is to kind of qualify for Kona next year. Like I want to win my age group and get like a Kona qualification. That's what we're sort of working towards. And in the last few weeks, I've been looking at some results from people in my like 18 to 24 age bracket. And like from Cairns, Ironman in Australia, there was a few people that went like in the low 9-hour sort of bracket. And that kind of got me thinking like, look, if I want to start the race next year confident and, you know, feeling prepared that I'm actually going to, you know, win in my age group and qualify for Kona, like I should be at least prepared to go sub 9 hours or aim for it. And that kind of got me thinking like, okay, well, what actually would it take to go sub 9 hours? And I had a good chat with my coach, which we actually recorded, and that's up on his podcast. So I'll link to that in case anyone does want to listen to it in detail. But essentially what I'll do now is I'm just going to sort of run through a few of the things that like I think it would take to go sub 9. And I'm certainly not sitting here going, okay, I'm definitely going to go sub 9, that's my goal, and you know, I'm going to manifest it and then all of a sudden it's going to happen. Like realistically, I would probably give it like, you know, a 10 to 20% chance that I could do a sub 9 hour Ironman next year. And I think that's what kind of makes it like the perfect sort of area to aim towards. Like it's a slim chance, but if things were to go really well with a lot of training, maybe I could get there and go sub 9. So that's the kind of goal I wanted to work towards. And then I kind of was thinking, okay, well, what exactly is it gonna take? And realistically, I think it's gonna take a 57-minute swim, a 5-hour ride, and then a sub 3 run. Like quick transitions in there as well. But essentially that would get us to just under 9 hours. And then, okay, I thought next of all, like, all right, I'll break it down and see what I would need to do for each of those legs. And you know, I did go into a lot of detail with this with my coach. So if you do want to listen to sort of a longer form discussion, I'll link to that. But just really basically, I mean, to start off with the swim, I need to swim 57 minutes comfortably. So I need to be swimming like 130s per 100 aerobically. And really there's two, I suppose, tenets, I would say, to swimming 57 minutes. And that's like technique and fitness. And I think fitness will come like just with what I'm currently doing. So just increasing that volume where I'm, you know, sort of at the moment doing 15K a week. I think just good endurance focus in the water, naturally I'm gonna become fit enough to swim that sort of pace. But what's most important and where I'm gonna make up the most ground is probably gonna be in technique. And I mean, technique can be improved through like drills and, you know, those technique sessions where I really focus on it. But more than anything, I think it's just gonna come with a lot of intense focus. Every session I go into, you know, just making sure that each stroke is better than the last. Actually trying to make sure that, you know, hand placement, everything, like, I think really just putting a lot of effort and attention into every swim I do, making sure that I'm trying to improve my technique as much as possible. And getting a lot of footage and analysis and things like that's important. But just staying, I suppose, concentrated in every swim is where I'm gonna make up sort of the most ground. Now at the moment, I think I'm like aerobic at say 140 per 100. So really I need to drop that down by like 10 seconds per 100, which I think is pretty achievable over the next, I think 7 months until the next race. I mean, the key thing is though that I have to get out of the water fresh enough to ride. Like looking back at my last race, I burnt a lot of matches in that Ironman swim. So I definitely can't repeat that again. Now the bike is definitely going to be the biggest factor, and it's going to be the biggest limiting factor. If anything's going to stop me from going sub 9, it's going to be the bike, because I wouldn't say I'm the most confident rider or the strongest rider, and realistically I need to be able to average 37 kilometers an hour and get off fresh enough to run. I mean, when it comes to the bike, I think there's really like 3 tenets to what's going to get me to 37 kilometers an hour average. So first of all, fitness. Like I have to be fit enough to ride 37 kilometers an hour. Also, I'll need pretty good riding skills to make the most of the course through corners, descents, things like that. But I'll also need good equipment, you know, an aero setup, and just a good efficient drivetrain. So first of all, fitness. And I kind of see there is, hey Google, stop.
Can I finish making my lunch or?
Yeah, just keep going. So first of all with fitness, I didn't know you were going to do that. So first of all, fitness. And I think within fitness, there's really 2 things that I need to be able to do. First of all, I need to be aerobic at maybe up to 250 watts. Like, I don't think it would be quite that hard, but look, I kind of need to be prepared to be aerobic at 250 watts. And I also need good enough muscle endurance so I can get off a 5-hour ride and still run a marathon. Now, the strength endurance component seems fairly clear on how we can achieve that. And I think that's just gonna come from good, long, consistent rides and then good, long strength endurance sessions. So low cadence, over gearing, you know, on hills and things like that, and just combining that with what we're already doing. So good, long, hilly rides. Becoming aerobic at 250 watts is gonna be quite challenging. And that'll be quite an interesting thing to try and achieve. I'm not too sure on the best way to go about this, but I think what we'll do is there's going to be a lot of aerobic to upper aerobic volume throughout the week, also with some VO2 work and, you know, some threshold work in there as well. But really underpinning it is going to be a lot of that aerobic intensity, just trying to really increase the volume on the bike. I think that's what's going to make me most efficient, but I will need that VO2 work and the threshold work just to try and raise that, you know, threshold and VO2 max, like try and raise that ceiling a bit. In terms of riding skills, look, I know the only way I'm going to be able to improve my riding skills is by actually getting out on the road. As much as I do love training indoors, I am going to have to get out on the course and get plenty of experience so that I can make the most of descents and corners and things like that. Try and pick up some free speed where I can. Also, in terms of skills, like, I'm going to have to be able to hold the TT position comfortably for 5 hours. In my last Ironman, I really struggled with that. I was having a lot of back pain, trying to strictly stay in that aero position, and I really wasn't able to hold it for as long as I needed to be. That's also going to come from just good long rides outdoors and really trying to stay strict in that aero position. As far as the quality equipment, like setup, things like that, I mean, I've got a pretty good TT bike, like it's a giant Trinity. I wouldn't think I'm gonna need too much more in terms of the bike, tri-suit, helmet, things like that. Hopefully I can get Carbon Mafia to loan me another set of wheels on race day, because the ones I used up at the Sunshine Coast were really good, really fast. So fingers crossed they'll help me out again next year. But yeah, if not, a good set of race wheels and maybe try and upgrade my drivetrain a bit just to make sure that's as efficient as possible. But I'm probably going to outsource a lot of that stuff to my coach, and just because he's a bit of a bike nerd, so I'll get him to, you know, give me plenty of advice on the best way to set up the equipment for race day. But yeah, I mean, overall, there's a lot that's going to go into the bike. I think the key thing is I'm going to be doing a lot more volume on the bike, trying to become a more skilled rider, making sure my equipment's as good as possible, but just overall, a lot of strength and a lot of aerobic volume. The run, I think I'm tracking pretty well on this one. Basically, what needs to happen is 4:15 pace, so just under a 3-hour marathon pace, needs to be aerobic, and I also need, you know, strong enough legs so that I'm not going to fade in the back part of a marathon. And I think what I'm currently doing at the moment is enough that by next year I should be able to run a sub 3-hour marathon. And basically what we're doing at the moment is good consistent long runs every week, so 25, building that up to, you know, 30 plus kilometers, and doing those runs on fairly hilly terrain. So not only am I building like good aerobic capacity on those long runs, I'm also building that strength in my legs that I'm going to need to not fade towards the end of the marathon. In addition to that, throughout the week, just plenty of that, you know, moderate to aerobic volume with some threshold work. So I've got the track session that I'll do just to try and keep my, you know, top end nice and high, just to try and, you know, raise that ceiling. But plenty of aerobic work, those good strong long runs. Hopefully that will be enough to increase my aerobic speed and also keep my legs strong enough so that I'm not going to fade in the back end of the marathon. Now, if all that goes well, maybe I could go sub 9. So yeah, I kind of just wanted to do this video just to sort of overlay the thing that I'm kind of working towards now. I was sort of thinking like, okay, qualifying for Kona is cool, but at the end of the day, it's kind of out of my control if someone shows up that's way faster than me and just blows me out of the water. So it's kind of better, I think, to have a time goal like this that's really at the top end of what I could achieve. That way, if I get it and I still don't qualify for Kona, you know, I'm not going to be disappointed. Like, I've went sub 9 hours. That would be a pretty phenomenal achievement, even if someone does come along and beat me anyway. So, but I mean, it's like I said last week. I mean, it's not really, honestly, I don't really care too much about, you know, achieving the goals, going sub 9 hours, qualifying for Kona. Like, I wanted to do something like this where it's so hard to achieve that it's just going to be fun to try and get there. So yeah, I think having a goal that's like right on the upper end of what is realistically possible for me to achieve is what's going to make the training in the lead up the most fun. All right, but let's have a look at this week's actual training. So starting out now, we just got a 6.2 kilometer swim. So this one's definitely like an endurance focus. We had a lot of 1500 meter repeats and 1K repeats. So it was actually the biggest swim I've ever done. And it starts out what will end up being the biggest swim week I've ever done.
Just feels tight.
Tuesday lunch, and I do that upper aerobic session I've been doing for the last few weeks, although I do add in 90 seconds of like above thresholds, like VO2 max stuff to start, so that then I'm recovering back down at that upper aerobic area. It was quite, it was a harder session, and I did come to pay for it that afternoon when I'm on the track. So the track session was a 2K, then we had 2K of 400 on off, or 200 on and then a float, and then we had another 2K. And by the end of that, I was running as hard as I could, and it was like 4 minutes per kilometer, which is a bit slower, or actually it's quite a bit slower than what I would normally run at the track. So I was certainly struggling, and I actually cut that workout short. We had a few other reps planned, but I cut it there because I wasn't feeling very good at all. Wednesday morning, and I think I sort of paid for pushing it a bit the day before, because we had a strength endurance session that was planned as 8 by 6 minutes at 260 watts with a cadence of like 60 RPM. I got through 1.5 of those efforts before I basically had to cut the workout because I was just not managing. I think my heart rate was getting up to like 185, 190, and there was no way I was going to get through that one. So my coach basically instructs me that if ever I'm, not feeling good enough to do a session, that I just cut out all the intensity and just back it off and get in some aerobic volume. And that's exactly what I did. So it essentially just became like a 2-hour easy to aerobic ride. Wednesday afternoon, we just had a 4.3 kilometer swim. That one was a real technique focused session. So a lot of drills, doing a lot of things where I was breathing to my least favorite side, which really makes me feel like I don't know how to swim, which I kind of don't. Thursday morning, and I'm sort of back on track here. We started out with a 2-hour aerobic ride, averaging like around 170 watts, but heart rate was back down to 130-ish beats, so that's feeling good.
Just feels tight.
Thursday afternoon was a pretty solid run, and I did that one on some, hilly-ish terrain. It's that 2% grade hill that I do a lot of my runs on. So there was 6 by 2 minutes mad with 2 minutes recovery, and then there was 4 by 1 minute mad with 2 minutes recovery. And just for those efforts, I was running those ones up the hill and doing the recoveries back down. So just on the hill for a bit of that, strength endurance sort of stuff. Hopefully that's going to stop me from fading towards the back end of the marathon. Friday morning's a 4.8 kilometer swim. Again, with just a pretty endurance focus in that one. Friday afternoon, it's 5 by 4 minutes at VO2 max. So, it's written as 5 by 4 minutes at 300, but really, I just use those numbers as kind of a guide. When it's written as VO2 max, you kind of know how that should feel. So I'm just kind of going at what's a comfortably uncomfortable, let's say, effort for 4 minutes.
Just feels tight.
Well done. So that takes us to Saturday now. We've got the long ride and I'm on the trainer again. Now the great thing is that at the moment I'm kind of working towards an indoor Ironman on December 10th. And that means that I've got the excuse of doing my long rides indoors on the trainer. And in all honesty, like, this cooked me. 5 hours on the trainer, averaging 190 watts. I think because I only took from memory 2 breaks. I had a break at the 2 hour, I had a break after 3 hours and then another one at 4 hours just for quick toilet stops and to refill water bottles. But essentially it means that there's constant power on the pedals for 5 hours. And getting off that one, you know, I was pretty sore. We had a strength session planned that afternoon, but I cut that because honestly my legs were cooked getting off the bike. So I think that's what's really great about riding indoors, and I was spending a lot of time really strictly in the aero position. Alright, last session of the week, Sunday long run, just like normal. We're slightly building this one up a bit now, so it's 2 hours and 10 minutes this week, averaging 5:20 per kilometre, so that took us to 24-ish kilometres. Running that one on the Ironman Australia run course, so always good to get some experience on there. But yeah, just a super moderate aerobic run to finish out the week. And that takes us, to the end. So, totals for the week. Up there with one of my biggest weeks of training, 22.5 hours. We had about 18 kilometers in the pool. So definitely my biggest ever week of swimming. We had 375 kilometers on the bike, although that was all on the trainer. So let's just call it 12 hours on the bike. And then we had 55 kilometers of running. So 5 hours in the pool, 12 hours on the bike, close to 5 hours of running. We had 1 strength session in there. That was it for the week. I mean, really, if you break it down for all 3 legs, there's aerobic volume with some top end stuff and then some longer endurance efforts in there. And that's really how we're training at the moment for all 3 legs. Trying to increase the aerobic volume, a little bit of work to raise the thresholds, and then just those long rides, long swims, and long runs, just to build that work capacity and overall endurance. But yeah, that's it for this week. And now that I've got, a fairly ambitious goal, it's good motivation, I suppose, for training.